Criticism. That's what I'm going to talk about after I don't know how many takes, because I keep waffling off and ending up talking about rhinos. We'll get there. So, getting criticism, giving criticism, and understanding how to take criticism as a creative it's a skill not everybody has. Not everybody is good at giving criticism. Not everybody, well, most of us are really, really shit at accepting criticism. but you can learn to be better. You can learn to take feedback and really, really valuable input and make something of it, make better art of it. I think I have to start off with Brene Brown. So Brene Brown is, you probably do know, a researcher and author who has moved very, very many creatives to tears because she is so on point and relentless in her dedication to the truth of it, the truth of certain parts of the human condition. So I have enormous respect for her. If you can read any of her books, just whatever you can find, she's in most of the big bookshops and online. Look around on YouTube. There will be links in the show notes. I think I'll remember to put them in. I'm not really that good at. I'm not an organized YouTuber. I'm just a dude in a studio with ideas. So Brene Brown. She has this reference to the man in the arena speech that was said by one of the American presidents about how it's not the critic who counts, it's the man in the arena covered in dust who, if he succeeds, knows the greatest triumph, and if he fails, at least he does so daring greatly. I mangled that, but it most of the words were more or less in the right places. For our purposes, the idea is that you don't look for criticism from the wrong sources. Get your criticism, which you need as a creative. You need feedback. You need people to say if things are working for them or not. But get it from the right sources. And that doesn't necessarily mean a sycophantic bunch of adoring fans or a specifically mean bunch of family members. That people need to have skill in the arena that you're fighting in, for want of a better term, to stick with the analogy. And also skin in the game. So they need to have some reason to actually give a shit. Because if you just approach somebody who has no skill in your little world and they give you their feedback, if a gigantic football fan gives feedback on your little performance art, dance thing, that's not as valuable as if you got that feedback from Sylvie Guillen or a much more well-known these days would be Misty Copeland. If your dance is getting responses from people at that level, you're getting much better quality feedback, better quality criticism. So just because somebody's in your family and they care a lot about you doesn't necessarily mean that what they're saying to you has any validity. They may love you dearly and you may adore them, but sometimes what they're saying to you is stupid. And you can compassionately ignore it. The receiving of criticism requires equal parts of courage and humility. So you have to be able to take a back seat and allow somebody to speak words that burn. They will burn. And that part takes courage. But you've got to take a back seat through that courage. Let them speak. If they are qualified and they are a genuine source of knowledge, then through the fire comes new growth and new birth. If they're saying mean shit just to put you in your place because they're feeling insecure, cry on your therapist's shoulder, or your cat, whatever you do to recover from things like that. Do some TRE exercises. I find that really useful in the moment. If somebody's just freaked me right out, and I go and I do a couple of very, very deep, slow sort of push-ups so that everything's shaking, it clears that. It clears that whole energy. It's a TRE, a super useful tool for recovering from triggering and trauma. There's a lot of very good research with sort of PTSD, soldiers returning from the front, that kind of thing. It's a good solid basis of evidence for it working, and I like it because it also keeps me fit. So it's useful, and I get freaked out quite a lot because I'm one of those sensitive creative souls. So being able to just find a simple exercise, literal exercise, that clears the cortisol and stops my brain from repeating that little crazy pattern has been invaluable. The other very, very important part of this getting criticism is that not only should it come from good sources, it should come from more than one good source. So talk to as many people as can, with skill, give you feedback. Watch for consensus. So one person in one arena might love what you do, absolutely no holds barred, except that there's this thing that you're doing with your elbow in the third bar. They're not understanding it, but they're sure it will develop into something. The next person you ask hates everything, absolutely everything. And it's all based on this weird thing you're doing with your elbow in the third bar. Then you've got some kind of consensus, and you can start to triangulate. There is something happening around that elbow and the third bar. I don't know what you'd be doing with an elbow in the third bar. I'm just sort of picturing dancing of some sort. But elbows don't figure hugely in dancing. Anyway, then you speak to a few more people who have some sort of grounding. They don't necessarily have to be experts, but they have to have some qualification or reason to have an opinion on your thing that you're making. And triangulate whether it's actually the elbow or the shoulder, whether it's the third bar or just halfway through the third bar. Find the thing that is disturbing, figure out why it's disturbing, but you get that from consensus. Feedback is known in educational circles, especially immediate and consistent feedback, to help you level up. The 10,000 hours rule thing works best with instant and thorough feedback based on what you've just done. So that can be very, very useful if you can get that kind of feedback as much as possible and get the consensus on it, and try and get it as quickly after you've done the thing as possible so you can really feel it, because a lot of this ends up being very instinctual, but we've got a lot of processes going on in our brains that we don't quite understand the basis of. The last part of getting criticism is trolls. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of you little fuckers out there. Go on, comment. It's okay. I don't ever read the comments, so yeah. Connect with me on social media if you want to speak to me, and try and use your real name. I will probably respond to you if you're using your real name. I don't really respond to people with fake names. You can really, really, really feel crap about your work after somebody's said something just petty and mean. So a good thought to keep in mind while you're busy doing your TRE muscle shaking squats or burpees or whatever you've picked, is that deep inside the critic, the person who cannot produce the work but who can criticize others, is somebody who is afraid of their own spark. They are afraid, they're deathly afraid of the thing that they need to create. And they externalize all of that angst and hatred on other people who are creating because they see the flaws that they might make and that they're afraid of being criticized for. So they preemptively strike out at you because they've never made the thing that they're afraid of someone saying that about. Try and treat them with compassion. Find something that humanizes them. Megan Phelps Roper is a very interesting human and speaker on getting and giving the worst criticisms, the worst trolling and tearing down that I think modern humans do. She left the Westboro Baptist Church, the God hates fags guys that kind of really, really fell off the sanity wagon quite badly and made a lot of big news stories. She was a child, grew up in that environment with people really just spitting hate on her as a child, and learned how to accept humans as being beautiful and flawed, and escaped that particular cult, and now has got one of the most beautiful talks that I've seen on just accepting discussion in an open way. So she talks about always trying to find something that humanizes the other person. Always. Doesn't matter what they've said to you, try to find something that humanizes them. Step away if it's damaging. Just don't do it. Just don't do it. Walk away. Remember that that is a human being. Right. On to giving criticism. So the correct way to give criticism, the absolute bottom line on it is try to understand what the person is trying to do. Your basis for criticism should not be your knowledge. It should be your comprehension of their performance, of their art. If you are qualified or unqualified, and you understand where they're coming from and what they're trying to accomplish, you are already in a much better position to give feedback than somebody who is massively qualified but who doesn't comprehend the person or the artwork. So talk about mostly the parts that you're qualified to talk about. What that would usually mean, especially if you don't have a particular background in any given field, is just talk about what emotions come up in you during various parts of your experience of their work. So if it's a song, mention the words that moved you, where they were and what it was that moved you in them. Was it the way that they went up? Was it the way that they were whispered? If it's an artwork, talk about that little color thing that's going on there draws my eye and I don't know why, but it's pulling me. That's the most interesting part for me. That is your best basis to start giving feedback to anybody, is your personal direct experience of the work. When you're bringing up negatives about the work, usually, especially if it's a first draft, talk more about what you don't understand than what is bad. Because saying something is bad, especially in a first draft, is not valid. It doesn't count. Nothing is bad in a first draft because everything is bad in a first draft. There might be a seed of genius in there, but everything pretty much is shit. So talk about the parts that you don't understand or that you get lost in. Don't use a negative language if you can help it. Set it like long-winded. If somebody's going on and on and on like I'm doing now, you could say, well, my mom said that I'm long-winded. And I'm like, thank you, Mom, but you should see some of the other shit on YouTube. But I think it would have been much easier to hear, even though it may be valid, if she'd said, it was quite long, or I got lost. But the word long-winded, by definition, is derogatory. So that was hard to hear. Also quite hard to compassionately reflect. The rain is really starting to come down now. We've got this cold front that's just hit Cape Town for the next couple of days. So, hang on. That is my outside view. That is rain. And that is only going to get worse. So I apologize for the sounds and for the distortion in the background, but this is what I've got. There's a tin roof. The last part of this that you should do as a critic is ask the person about their intentions. What are they trying to accomplish with this? Why does it have this format? Why have they made the creative choices that they've made? Don't phrase these as criticisms in themselves. Say to them, okay, if I'm going to give you feedback, I need to understand why you've made these choices. Because if you've never heard of Egon Schiele, and you see this weird squiggly painting, you're not going to understand where the person's coming from. If they're making say like a parody of Egon Schiele, and you just see squiggly, ugly, weird, lots of fingers doing this, it's not going to make sense to you. So understanding where the person's coming from might explain the joke. It might give you an insight into why that particular thing could actually work, especially for people who are very familiar with the subject. In the end, we don't really have a perfect communication system. We're really messy creatures on an emotional level. So you're going to mess up giving criticism and getting criticism. You're going to blow back at somebody who has the best of intentions because you're feeling very sensitive about something. And you're going to say something really stupid to somebody you love because you weren't thinking, or because you're their mom and you trigger everything. That's just kind of how it goes. So the best you can do is to learn the skill points. Listen to people like Brene Brown and Megan Phelps Roper, and there are a couple of other really, really good good thinkers on the subject of feedback. And I'm going to try and remember to put this in the show notes. So, yeah, if I don't, just be patient. I'll get there eventually. Or bug me on social media. Kim Moby everywhere, but I'm very rarely on Facebook because it's a cesspool of negativity. Yeah. That'll do.